Thanks, Ella. Uh, I'm going to talk to you about a couple of things. I'm going to talk to you just a little bit about the history of Praxis Theatre and how it started, and then a little bit about the modern theatre artist and how that's a new and developing person in the arts community here, and a little bit about our website. And then Bridget's going to talk to you about our fundraising activities, which is appropriate because she's on my board of directors and that's her responsibility. But before I get into that, I just want to actually mention two things related to the first two speakers here. I am a director of theater, but there was a point in my life when I was still an actor, and my best and biggest experience I ever had as an actor was performing in the Fort at York, actually. And Chris did a really amazing job with that. And in terms of what we're talking about here tonight, I was there to see the part where Chris was a performer and a producer and had to decide to just be a producer and a producer. And that's what happens, I think, when you get to the size and the scope of the thing that Chris was trying to do. When you have a contact list of 30 people and you have the Globe and Mail and Now Magazine coming to opening night, you need to make sure that tickets are available at the door and like some very basic things that are very different in mindset from being a performer. And I'm sure that was a really big sacrifice for Chris to make at the time. And anyways, I just thought it was a very brave thing of him to do. And now here we are 2 years later, so I'll say that to you in front of a big group of people. And the second thing I wanted to say was totally separate from this. During the last federal election, I was part of a group of artists in a thing called Department of Culture, which is trying to organize in the election pro-arts way. And probably our biggest ally was an organization called Vote for the Environment, which Alice Klein, who you might recognize as the publisher of Now Magazine, was behind. And they had a really innovative social media strategy that let us learn about them, which was this website which basically gave you as much information as they had about who was the candidate who supported environmental issues, who was most likely to win a given riding. Now, they were not right all of the time, but they were right a lot of the time. And what we found was that that was also the candidate that was always the most pro-arts candidate also. And so we started working in tandem together through both of our websites. And so I think, Ella, there's always a connection there between those two groups. Anyhow, I'm here to talk about Praxis Theatre. Praxis started in 2003. It's run by myself and my best friend from junior high named Simon Rice. And I moved back here from the States after doing an MFA right around when Simon was graduating from Humber's theater program. And we decided we were going to put on a play in the Fringe Festival. And then it's a lottery, and so we didn't get in. But we had to come up with a name for the application. So we sat around Simon's apartment for a long time, and we went through the dictionary. And fortunately, Simon's roommate, Greg, it was a philosophy major. He knew what all the words meant and their connotations. And when we said praxis, he explained what the word praxis meant, and it meant the process of moving from ideas to reality. And we liked that a lot. We liked that that meant, you know, the creative process of our ideas eventually becoming a work of art. And we also liked the idea of our ideas having an impact on the world. So we didn't get in the Fringe, but we did end up putting on our first show at the Theater Center in 2004, and we kept the name because we'd done that afternoon of sitting on the couch listening to Greg. And it was an interesting experience. We did not have a lot of people come out that weren't associated with the first production. I would say like 95% of the attendees somehow were connected to someone who helped create the show. But it really helped us learn about how to build a team who was serious about making this theater, who wasn't serious about it, and also just establishing a track record for us as a company that could rent a theater and put on a show and could get that part down anyhow. Over the next couple of years, we did a bunch of shows in the Fringe Festival, which is part of how I met Bridget, because Bridget used to run the Fringe Festival. What was your official role in the Fringe when we met you?
I was festival coordinator and then producer, so that's how we met.
Right. So I was always arguing with Bridget about things, and she was always incredibly helpful with me. So I knew she was going to be an awesome board member. And then she ended up buying a house with my stepsister, so we're connected in lots of different ways. Anyhow, that's a strange tangent I won't bore you with. So we did a lot of shows in the Fringe, we did shows in Summer Works, and we slowly started to build up a reputation for a company that does new works, and that's all we do. We do either adaptations of literature, or sometimes we work with playwrights to make things, and more recently, we're kind of moving into together, everyone in the show being responsible somewhat for creating the story. Yeah, we've had a number of successes, and it's been a really positive experience. One of the things we had to accept earlier on is that this wasn't going to pay our bills right away, and that this was something to be done as professionals, but on the side. And that's been probably the biggest challenge of this, and you know, the topic of this is doing a lot with little, and that's what I really think is the challenge of doing a lot with little, is if you don't have a lot, then it's not paying your rent, and you still have to keep doing the thing that you're doing. So always our fundraising has been in the context of the fact that for the most part, until quite recently, people were doing other things and creating this art. What else do you need to know about Praxis? That's about it. We've done 9 shows, and our 9th one is kind of in the midst of a redevelopment, which is going on at Harbourfront in a development process they have there called Hatch. And I'll tell you about that show in a second. But I wanted to talk a little bit about how I think the modern theater artist is changing, and this will tie into what Bridget has to say. But I think it used to be that if you went in the theater, you're like, I am an actor, or I am a director, or I'm a playwright, and then you kind of hammer away at trying to be this thing. And I found in my experience that almost everyone I know who's successful is 4 or 5 things now. They're director, actor, playwright, producers, or they're choreographer, dancer, playwrights. Very few people are getting by just being one thing. And so that ended up really tying into our creative process also, and giving people more than one responsibility. So the best example I have of this is we have a general manager. She has an awesome job. She trained with a company called Nightwood Theatre to be a producer, and she's also a producer at Harbourfront. But she's also an actress. She's an MFA in acting and is a very good actor. So our deal with Maggie is she general manages the company, and we put her in place.